Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys could join us once again. For those tuning in on our simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X, we're glad you all can be with us. There are friends over on IG, going to bring them in. And last but certainly not least, going to connect with our friends over on Amazon Live. I'm really excited about this next guest. I had an early read of her book. It's officially out today. And now I get to be able to discuss it with her and also introduce you guys to it as well. And we're now live on Amazon Live with Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button, either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book by my next guest. We're so excited to welcome Stacy Bass to our broadcast today. She's the author of the book you guys can see there in our carousel. It's called Lightkeeper. The subtitle of the book is a memoir through the lens of love and loss. We're going to talk to Stacy not only about the writing of the book, but the capturing of the memories, the reflections she was able to have, and also what she hopes you as readers are able to take away as well. Stacy, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Cyrus. It's a pleasure to be here.
Look, the pleasure is definitely all mine. I had said to you before we went live here, I was saying happy pub day to you, and you were saying, it's been a long time coming. How does it feel to now have the book officially out for the world to enjoy?
Mixed feelings, of course, like excitement, a little trepidation, as you know, because you had an early read. It's an intimate book. It's very exposed in many ways emotionally, and while that feels good and cathartic in many ways, it's also, it's a different thing to have it out there for all the world to see, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm so glad. I love that you use the word cathartic, though, because I think for myself, not knowing you before reading this book, you allow us to make a connection with you, though, through your pain, through your loss, but also through your reflections and moving forward. Was that part of your hope, Stacy, with this book, that not only would you be able to share a bit of your own story and journey, but also to show other people how you've been able to move forward and how they can too when it comes to grief and loss?
Absolutely. I think that what really made me want to turn this into a book and not something that was just personal reflections or journal entries, if you will, was the fact that I felt people could be helped by it, that people could take some lessons from what I've learned from these two difficult losses, very different losses, one from an accident and one from a longer illness from cancer, that some of the lessons I've learned are certainly applicable to anyone who is grieving. And so absolutely that was the inspiration for really making it a book.
As a fellow creative, Stacy, I can imagine, having your gift when it comes to photography definitely helps you be able to capture feelings and emotions. How did that marriage of words and pictures, how did that feel for you as you were putting the book together?
Honestly, adding the words to the pictures was really what made all the difference. As a professional photographer and as someone who kind of is connected to photography most viscerally, that was always my instinct, was to use my photography to help process my loss and my grief. And I did do that. But I feel that it wasn't until I added the writing to the photography and started to examine what was outside the frame of the picture that I feel like I made the most progress in terms of trying to figure out how you can live with grief. I like to think, for many, many years, the concept has been that grief has its stages. You're supposed to go through the stages, and at the end, somehow you come out whole. And I think that my experience has been, and I'm not a professional or psychologist, is that grief is something that in many ways never goes away. And if you can find a way to live with it, to find a place to kind of hold it in your body differently than you might otherwise, it can allow you to both grieve and also live and lean into the beauty in your life and find joy and not have your entire life derailed by, truly horrible things that happen to all of us. Right. And I think that for me, the lesson has been finding a way to cope with that, finding a way to articulate it, not just publicly, but privately, has been really important in being able to move forward and find a way to live with it.
I love that. And I think it's such a great reminder for all of us. Hello to you, Adele. Good to be able to see you over there on YouTube. Jewel Swanson, hello to you over there on IG. And I see you guys over there on Amazon as well as on X. If you guys have any questions for Stacy, make sure you guys do put those in the chat. We'll be glad to be able to recognize those as well. The other thing we're able to see, Stacy, as I mentioned, I didn't know you before the book, but we're also able to see your own growth too. So yes, you're talking about events that happen, passage of time, but we also able to see your own journey as well. What was that like for you to be able to think about not only the emotions you felt and what you went through, but also the you on the other side of it?
It's been an evolution. It's a long journey. The accident that killed my father was 30 years ago now.
Hmm.
So I've been processing and thinking and dealing and grieving with this for a really long time. I think that over time, I learned that being able to express some of what I was feeling was not just helping other people, but certainly helping myself. And then ultimately, many years later, when my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, I had the experience of having lost my father so instantly in an accident to approach my mother's illness differently. And those lessons learned were, part of it might have just been my maturity. I was 28 when my father died, and I'm now close to 60. Obviously a very different place in my life, but the lessons learned from that first experience have no doubt impacted how I'm able to move through the world, having had those losses.
Yeah. One of the things that when you were talking, it reminded me when you mentioned your dad, Stacy. It reminded me of a conversation you recounted with your mom. And I'll talk around it. You know what I'm probably talking about without giving it away. People will see when they read it. But a conversation where she made an admission to you about her current situation versus with your dad. You know what I'm talking? Yeah.
Yeah,
So so and I think it goes to again the impact of loss, but also our own feelings. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because one thing this book reminded me of, Stacey, and I think it's so important for our audience to remember, is that everyone grieves differently. And yes, we're talking
absolutely.
about loss of life, but we also are grieving situations that may have happened. What was that like for you to think about the different ways that people grieve, especially when reflecting on that conversation with your mom?
I think I'm glad you brought that up. I think that that's, it was a very poignant reminder that everybody was coming at this differently.
Yeah.
And I also talk about in the book that, my mother lost her father to a heart attack when she was 11. So different age, but similar in that it was an instantaneous loss. And during the time that, we were together before she passed away, that was not something that we talked about very often, not something that she even made the connection by saying, I also lost my father. I think one of the many generous things that she did in her life as my mom, I felt that was extremely generous for her to recognize that I was going to have to go through this process of grieving the loss of my dad differently than the way she had, regardless of, comparing relationships. That wasn't really relevant. And she was right. I mean, I needed to do that. And I think that it is a reminder that everybody is struck by these situations in a very different way, depending on what the relationship was with the person who passed, of course, but also just, imagining what that hole in your life looks like going forward.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a great reminder. And I think it's so timely, Stacey, as we're having this conversation where people are grappling with not only dealing with loss and with tragedy, but also trying to find hope again. I think that's another thing that comes through in this book. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents on Amazon Live, but we are simulcasting on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on Instagram. Stacy Bass is our guest today. She's celebrating the new release of her book. It's called LIGHTKEEPER, a memoir through the lens of love and loss. I want to talk about another side of this too, and that is being okay with living again. I think a lot of times we all, and you kind of reflect on this as well, Stacy. What was it like for you to realize that, we talk about a new normal, so I won't use that phrase, but what was it like for you to realize that it was okay for you to live even after you'd gone through tragedy and heartbreak?
I think that that's not often an instantaneous realization. I think it really takes time to kind of settle into, as you suggested, kind of a new normal. I've been recently thinking about it kind of like your life is a puzzle with thousands of pieces. And by the time you're 28 or so, which is how old I was when the accident happened, you've made the borders of the puzzle are intact and you're filling in the pieces in between, which can take a lifetime and does take a lifetime. And I think that in that moment, the borders, which were the foundation, kind of exploded and went in every imaginable direction, some of which were easy to see sort of off in the distance and some of which felt lost. And I think in the early years, there's just a lot of time spent trying to rebuild that foundation, to trying to, put the border around the puzzle back together so you can start filling in the blanks. And I think, I guess if we follow that analogy, the beauty and the joy and living your life, sort of going on to live your life, are some of those puzzle pieces, and they don't all necessarily fit together quickly. And I think it's okay for people to realize that and not feel like they have to revert back to a fully formed and functioning person immediately. That I don't think that's realistic. And I think knowing that grief doesn't necessarily have to have a timeline can be something that releases people from a lot of guilt about living their life.
As you were talking, I thought about another passage I'd marked in the book, and I'd like to read it, Stacy.
Sure.
The chapter is "Which Would You Rather," and it's two parts of this that you wrote that I thought our audience would appreciate, considering what you just said. You write, "One learns so much about life and love, devotion and compassion, and relationships from the suffering caused by an accidental loss as cataclysmic as the one I'd had to endure. Priorities, what matters most in life and in death." And then you go on to say this: "Similarly, though far more profoundly, I've often considered which is worse, an immediate and accidental death or dying after an extended illness. Of course, the answer depends on whether you are the one doing the hypothetical dying or one of the many left behind. I wish that thinking this through was a purely speculative or intellectual exercise, but alas, for me and my family, it wasn't. And yet, because of the unique circumstances I found myself in, I sought to find the answer, to learn the lessons that one experience could teach me and allow it to guide me through the other." So I wanted to ask you, Stacy, talk to us about the lessons that you want us all to think about. What do you want us to consider as you kind of, dealt with your own loss and life afterwards? What do you want us to think about as we deal with our own?
I think that what I was alluding to mostly in that situation is, even though my father and I had a wonderful relationship, and you could argue that there was nothing, quote, left unsaid between us when he died, not having the opportunity to say goodbye, to process some of what happened in advance, is a disadvantage, of course. And I think the lesson I learned from that was, when my mother was diagnosed, to try to intentionally and actively deal with what appeared to be the obvious loss that was going to follow in a different way. And that meant I actively did different things. I talked to her about things that I had questions about. I made a point of recording her voice, telling stories that I don't have my father's voice recorded in any way. I did, as you probably know from the book, I did a living tribute for her on Facebook, which was, a post every day, which was intended to create a universe, really, of support around her, a community of people who were reaching out to her each day and asking questions about the post or something that it evoked for them. And I think that engagement was something that really helped her through her illness and also helped me. So I feel like my advice is to try to think about those things while you can, before you're put into a situation where you have some number of months that have been designated for your loved one to live. Like, that's a very intense time to start thinking about how to do that. But if you could do some of that now, when people are healthy and you have access to them and they're nearby, I feel like those are things that will only benefit you later, that will only help you to heal more and provide you with the connection that most people are yearning for when someone has passed away.
As you were talking about your mother, I then thought about the title, and I think this is an appropriate time for us to talk about the title. Stacy, talk to us about why you chose Lightkeeper, because as a reader, I have my own thoughts that came from it, and that was that we can kind of be that individual. We can be that person that kind of keeps the light burning, and through memories and through conversations like this that we're having today. But how did you choose the title Lightkeeper for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that was obviously one of the elements. I mean, in its most basic form, light keeping is what photography is. I mean, it is literally keeping and holding the light. So from that standpoint, that was one element. And then the more obvious one, or the one that I think was most important in this case, was about keeping the light alive of those who have passed. And that's something that this book does, for sure. It's something that images by their nature do. And certainly all of us have some stash of old family photos that they're not necessarily, displayed or in an album that you have easy access to, but that might be in a drawer or a box or somewhere in the basement. And I guess I'm encouraging people to allow themselves to dive into those boxes, to look through those pictures, to talk about the pictures with loved ones and family and friends while you can, and to allow those pictures to, as I feel the book, it sort of displays, be a portal into your memories. Let the photo be that entry point that you can really think about what was going on before and after that image was taken, and where did it happen, and who was there, and what are some of the details surrounding that. And I think that's something we all can do. And, there's lots of other ways of light keeping. You can, wear a locket that holds your loved ones, in your hand, or around your neck at all times. There's all kinds of ways that you can keep the light alive. And for me, the combination of the photography and the writing was, I felt, the best way I knew how to honor them and their memory.
Love that. Well, it's a beautiful book, Stacy, and I'm so glad we got a chance to share your pub day with you. I want to say hello to Molly Mall over there on IG. Ava, hey, Ava Miles, good to see you. Bright Eyes Author, got a lot of authors joining us over there on IG. Appreciate you guys being with us as Stacy celebrating the pub day of her brand new book called Lightkeeper, a memoir through the lens of love and loss. Has this title kind of settled in for you now, Stacy, of being a published author?
I really feel good about the title. I've said before that, one of the things when you come to the publication process, you're not sure how some of what you've done is going to get altered by the team, the publishing team, the marketing team. Sure. And in this case, I really, really wanted Lightkeeper to be the title for the reasons we discussed. And I was a little bit nervous that they might say it's not commercial, it's not this, it's not that. But thankfully, I think that they really got on board and loved what it suggests. And people seem to be reacting in a very positive way to it. So I'm grateful for that.
Love that. Well, so excited for this new chapter for you. So excited for people to get to know you in your own journey, Stacy, and to be inspired by it as well. Again, the book Lightkeeper is out now. You guys can get it in print. You get the Kindle, the audiobook are all here on Amazon. Again, for you guys joining us on the Amazon platform, you see them either here on the side or down below. For those of you who are joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, you'll find a link that will bring you guys over to Amazon for sure. Stacy, let our audience know, how can they stay connected with you?
Oh, thanks for asking. You can find out some more about the book at lightkeepermemoir.com. My Instagram is Stacy Bass Photo or Gardens at First Light. And my website is stacybassphotography.com.
Well, congratulations to you again, Stacy. So glad to have you on and looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
It's our pleasure. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, y'all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.